Greetings. This is the one you've known as Jesus the Christ. In non-dual spiritual circles, teachers often say that nothing matters, and I've often said that everything you do matters. So I'd like to explore these ideas with you today. Within spiritual teachings are many paradoxes, seemingly conflicting statements that are both true, at least to some extent. That's what a paradox is. Nothing matters and everything matters is one such paradox. The reason there's such a thing as a paradox is that words are inadequate to describe the reality of the more subtle world. Words were designed to describe concrete reality, what you can verify with your five senses. They were not designed to describe the deeper reality, truth with a capital T. So let's begin with the idea that nothing matters. Based on the fact that everyone dies and everything disintegrates, one could conclude that what you do doesn't matter because nothing lasts anyway. This is a conclusion the ego might come to. Why bother, says the ego. Or based on the difficulty some have in ascribing any meaning or purpose to life, one might conclude about life that nothing matters. This is the philosophy of nihilism, and it's simply not true, but something the ego commonly believes. And since nihilism isn't the truth, it causes a great deal of suffering. But from a spiritual perspective, there is some truth in the statement, nothing matters. Because you are eternal beings and your essence can never be harmed, whatever happens in life ultimately doesn't matter, as it can't and doesn't harm who you really are. And from the perspective of the higher dimensional beings guiding you in your growth, nothing you do is wrong or can put you out of God's heart. Every choice is acceptable. Every choice serves growth. From a higher perspective, there is no right or wrong, because every choice eventually leads to love. You can take a more difficult path to love, or you can take an easier path to love. So in that sense, your choices don't matter. It is all good. This is opposite the conclusion the ego comes to about life. There's also a place that some people land as they traverse the spiritual path, where it feels like they've found the truth, and that truth is that nothing matters. From that particular perspective, this seems absolutely true. So some spiritual teachers teach this, although this can easily be misinterpreted by the ego in a nihilistic way, as if there's no meaning or purpose in life. The ego takes the position that every little thing matters, more often than the position that nothing matters. Every little thing the ego doesn't like but can't change, such as a rainy day when you had a picnic in mind, really matters to the ego, even though such things don't actually matter. In truth, none of the little things the ego cares so much about matters. Even many of the bigger things the ego cares about don't matter because they aren't essential to your happiness and well-being. People just think they are. In that sense, nothing matters is true, especially when nothing is referring to material things. No thing matters. Things don't last, and they aren't the source of happiness. The ego makes things matter that don't matter, while the ego doesn't realize what actually matters, love. To the ego, being right matters, looking good matters, doing something perfectly matters, getting things and success matters. To the ego, its desires really matter, while love doesn't matter so much unless love impacts its desires one way or the other. Love is only a priority to the divine self. From a higher perspective, everything you do, every choice you make, matters because you are connected to everything else, Everything you do, everything you say, every choice you make affects the feelings and choices of those around you, and consequently around those individuals. What you do and say reverberates outward and affects what others say and do, not just immediately, but going forward in time. What you do really matters in this web of life, whether you're aware of that or not. You have an effect on this real world, and what you do affects what others do in response and how they feel about you, which affects you. You can't do anything without it affecting others and yourself in some way, and often other life forms on Earth. Often what you do and say reinforces the identities you hold dear, keeping your conditioning in place, until maybe someone else affects you and causes you to respond to life differently. People inevitably grow, and they grow as a result of other people's impact and also their example. Everyone is affecting everyone else and everything else, including the planet and its life forms. Many individuals all making the same choice can change the world, for better or for worse. It may seem like your choices don't matter, because you often can't see the effects of those choices. But that doesn't mean there aren't any. With social media and the internet, single voices can have an inordinate amount of power. Are you making your voice heard, and what are you saying to the world? Are you aligned with love and peace, or with your ego when you speak and act? If you believe that nothing matters, that your voice and actions don't matter, then you're most likely sleepwalking through life and letting others steer the world in the direction they wish. If you take your ego too seriously, all the wrong things will matter, or nothing will matter. If you're aligned with truth, however, you realize that how you are in life is how you affect life moment to moment. And how you are in life is a choice. How you are in life is what matters. The ego goes through life in reaction to it or unconsciously responding from conditioning. But when you're aligned with truth, you go through life with more awareness and consciousness of your inner state and how that affects you and those around you. You notice your inner state and thoughts and make conscious choices about how you express yourself in the world. Will you express your ego or your divine self? In every moment there's a choice to be made, and this choice matters. If you believe that nothing matters, either because your ego believes this or you hold this as a spiritual belief, then you're denying the impact you have on life, which means you probably aren't making conscious choices about how you are in life. Religion is involved in teaching people to be a certain way in life. And although religions sometimes get this wrong, they at least try to affect how people behave toward each other, and they generally try to improve how people behave so that society runs more smoothly. When religion falls short or is no longer heeded, what takes its place? What guides how you are in life? Fortunately, you don't have to be brought up in a religion to know how to be in life. You are born with a moral compass, and that instrument points toward love. It's just that the ego holds sway within most people, not love. So making the loving choice takes effort. This is where everything matters is an important philosophy. It counteracts the ego's nothing matters, which is a detrimental belief system and quite untrue in a practical sense. If you hold everything matters as your guidepost, meaning everything you do or say matters, you'll make more conscious choices. The ego's focus on the things that matter to it can keep you from focusing on what really matters, how you are in life. The ego cares about what happens to it in life. That's what matters to it, while the divine self cares about how it is in life, how it impacts life. The ego reacts to life according to its desires, while the divine self responds to life from a place of love and acceptance. The ego is trying to shape life to fit its desires. It asks, how can I change what's happening now to better fit my ideas of how I want it to be? In contrast, the divine self asks, how can I best be in life now in relation to this event or this person? How can I best serve life? The ego's approach is futile because it's already too late to change anything about the moment, and all the ego can really do is complain and suffer, while the divine self responds to the moment with grace and awareness of its impact on the moment. The divine self affects the moment by how it is in life, while the ego rails against it, and this railing against life has a negative impact on oneself and on those nearby. Do you see how very different these approaches are? The ego's approach is passive. The ego is the victim of its own desires, while the divine self's way of being joins with the moment, flows with the moment, and responds wisely as called for in the moment. The divine self is paying attention to the moment and responding with wisdom, acceptance, and grace to the moment, while the ego is fighting with it, a fight that the ego can never win. This is why those in the egoic state of consciousness are so often exhausted and feel defeated. They're fighting a losing battle. They think they can get the moment to bend to their will by wishing it were otherwise. But this argument with what is only leaves them exhausted and unhappy. The moment is what it is, and you can only shape it by joining with it, not fighting against it. You have to accept the moment as it is and join with it. Then whatever actions you take will be right action and affect the unfolding of life in a positive way, for the good of all, which includes your own good. The ego thinks that getting its desires met is what is good and right, but it doesn't know what is good and right. This can only be known by joining in life rather than fighting with it. Life is good, and it's unfolding according to love and the good of all. If people can learn to join the flow of life instead of struggling to get something else from life, life can go smoothly for everyone. This is something human beings are learning now. They're learning to surrender their ideas about what they want and how life should look to what is, and see that life is unfolding perfectly in accordance with a higher order. The only thing that interferes with a more graceful unfolding is people insisting on trying to get something for themselves that is not in alignment with a greater good. Thank you for being here. I am with you always.